Okay, I'm going to teach you how to draw this, break it down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine, so that you can have a go, create this, and amaze yourself. Okay, so as I explained in the intro, I'm going to break this down into steps so that you learn the painting process and techniques, as well as the tools within the app I'm using Procreate. But that isn't to say you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Having said that, within the app Procreate, I'm using their default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. And then in terms of the color profile, again, within Procreate by default, I'm using their sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1. And in terms of the brushes, I'm going to again use the default brushes that come with the app. So within airbrushing, I'll use the soft brush, the medium brush, and the medium hard brush. Within inking, I might use the studio pen. Within organic, I'll probably use the rainforest brush. Within artistic, I'll use the hearts brush. And that will probably do, but if I add any more, then I shall explain them as we go along. And in terms of the colors, well, I've already pre-selected a color palette for this tutorial, and each of the colors, if we go to the value section, has an area called hexadecimal where you can put in the codes for each of the colors, and the color codes are down in the video description, so you just need to copy and paste them into this box one at a time. Press enter and the color appears in the top corner, and then you can just tap it into your own palette and create this all yourself. Or next to the codes in the video description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the color file for free to save you some time. And Patreon is also the place where you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of many of these tutorials. I'd like to say a massive thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon, and it really does make a huge difference, so thank you so much. And with all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do with the canvas is just rotate it into the portrait orientation. Then I'm going to go to the color circle, the first color on the top row. I'm going to drag it from the color circle into the canvas and flood fill. Now, right from the outset, don't be too worried if the colors are slightly different on your iPad compared to the screen that you're watching this tutorial on. The camera that I use tends to create a little bit of a distortion of the colors, so don't worry too much. That is why I supply the color codes and the download. Just follow the steps and you will create a version that does look like the version that I've created off camera. I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 2. I'm then going to go to the second color on the top row. And I'm going to go to the hearts brush within artistic. I'm going to put it pretty big to begin with, maybe 30% size and maybe 40% strength. And then we're just going to start kind of randomly tapping in some of this texture. Now I'll just zoom in a little bit, you can see it a bit better. We just want to create a rough texture so it looks like we've got a render on our building, and we want it to be a little bit irregular, not particularly consistent, so quite a kind of mottled look will work well for us. So you might get some collections of it in some areas, in other areas perhaps you just have a bit more of the original color showing through. Don't worry too much. We're going to add a lot of a shadow tone to this as well, and obviously we're going to have the central feature of the window obscuring much of this. And of course we can go back in, and if we feel that a certain area of the texture is, just needs a little bit of refinement, then we can do that. But I doubt that we will need to do that. Go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 3. Go back to our colors and use the third color on the top row. Same brush, but we'll just turn it down to 20% size, still at 40% strength. And I'm just going to tap this in. So we've got a nice kind of yellow tone coming through now. And again, just move it around the canvas. You can have blocks of it where it kind of collects together in a larger, bulkier area of the yellow. Other areas where it's just a little bit sparse. Don't overly fuss about it at this stage. We are going to obscure much of this, so really just allow yourself to be quite loose with it. We just really want to create a real kind of random texture all the way over our canvas. So something like that. I'm going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer, layer 4. I'm going to go to the selection tool and choose the rectangle. Now I'm going to set the the main shape of our window. Now it may not be exactly the same when you come to do yours, and that is fine. Windows do come in different shapes and different proportions, so I'm just going to do a rectangle. So I don't want it too near the top. Want it to be roughly evenly spaced either side on left and right, and I don't want it too near the bottom. So maybe something like this. And then going to go to my colors. I'm going to choose the 5th color along. I'm going to drag to flood fill that rectangle, and then I can deselect the selection. Now, obviously we can go to something like the transform, put it on freeform, and then we can manipulate that to get it exactly as we want it anyway. And we can always distort this later. Even when we've added other layers on top, it's never going to be too late to adjust this. So don't worry too much at this stage. I'm going to go to the layer, slide and duplicate it. The top version, I'm going to go to the adjustments, hue, saturation and brightness. And I'm just going to change the brightness. It doesn't need to be very much. Just turn it down to 47% perhaps. Deselect, then go back to the transform. And maybe within uniform now, just pull it in from the corners, and we want to, in fact, let's put it to freeform. We want to create as close as we can get a similar kind of thickness all the way around. So we've got a bit of a frame right from the outset. And I'll deselect, and if you want to zoom in just to really feel like you're getting this accurate, then that's fine. Like I need to pinch it out from that side a little bit more. And it needs to be as accurate as you can get it, judging by eye. And then I'm going to take that version, that layer, and duplicate that. Then I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to go to the adjustments, hue, saturation and brightness, and turn the brightness up this time, 53. Deselect, transform, melts us down the freeform. We want to pretty much treat it in the same way. So just pull it in from the sides, just deselect so I can do it again. And this bottom edge, I feel like I want to make it as close as I can to the thickness of that initial frame. But by eye is good enough. Then I'm going to create a new layer, layer 7. I'm going to go in with the selection again, and again just create a rectangle. It doesn't need to be particularly neat considered at this point. I'm going to go back to the colors, go to the 7th color, drag it from the circle into the box, and then deselect. Transform, and I'm just going to perhaps zoom in so I can really get this exactly where it needs to be. I want it indented just a little bit, but not massively. So I want a little bit of a gap between that darker band and then this dark window. Something like that. Now we can go to that layer and slide and duplicate it, transform, and we just want to move it across to the other side and achieve pretty much the same thing on both sides. Deselect. Now we've got a chunky kind of gap in the middle, and I'm quite happy for there to be a sizable gap there. So once we've got the 2 initial windows, slide and duplicate that layer, take one of the versions, transform, and just move it down, and I want to make sure it's central as much as possible by eye, and I also want to make sure that this is thicker than there, but not as thick as the beam that cuts down vertically. Maybe just a little bit further down. Again, judge by eye, that center area, something like this, and then slide and duplicate it again, transform, and move it down. Now I don't care whether it goes off the edge of the window here. Let me show you. I don't care about that. I'm just trying to replicate the gap at the sides and also this. Again, by eye should be enough as long as you've got a reasonably good judge of things. Just turn it around, check it. Does it look right? If it does, perfect. Okay, take all of layer 7 and pinch it together. It can be a bit tricky. Persist. There you go. All you need to do now is go to the transform, freeform, and just pull it up from the bottom so that it does now fit within that frame. So now you can see you've got a little gap at the bottom. If it just needs a little bit of finessing, fine tuning, then go ahead and do that. Whoops. Again, check for consistency around it. I feel like that's reasonably consistent at this point, so I'm happy enough with that. Now we're going to create a new layer. I'm going to do it to be with the hold and snap feature to straight lines initially, but then I'm going to create a rougher version over the top of it. So to begin with, I'm going to go in with the airbrushing medium brush. I'm going to go in with the 9th color on the top row, 1% size and 100% opacity. And then we're going to, as carefully as we can, from this point, find the center line that would cut down the middle and do the same again just so it's the bottom of that darker area. And then if you just rotate it so you can connect the points, hold it, and just check that it's central, and there you go. We're going to do a line across from over here, so put a point, and the same on this side, and again just connect the dots so it runs along the top there. Hold it, straighten it up, and we're going to do the same at the bottom section here. So run that line across to the end, and I don't care if it's unneat there to there. Connect the dots up. I'm going to connect from here down here, draw a line, connect them up. Same on this side, from here to here, connect them up, hold. Then I'm going to draw a line from this corner downwards. Do freehand, it's fine. We're just setting the kind of boundaries. I like it to bow in a little bit, almost like it juts in. And then down, that's fine too. We get to the top, take that line up. We'll do something similar over here as well, just join it up here. We're only setting the kind of the guide for this initially. Now, those rough lines here are probably going to be very similar to what we end up with as the overall look anyway. We will be repeating this somewhat. Then here we're going to divide this roughly into thirds, so draw a line, let it hold. Same there. Now for this section, perhaps we could just go to the selection, put it on freehand, just grab all of that, just to save some time, close the loop, 3-finger drag down, copy, 3-finger drag down and paste, and then you can just move that to the next area. And now it is on a separate layer, you can slide and duplicate that inserted image, and you can put it in the next section, slide and duplicate it again, move it across to the next section, like so. Those inserted images, just in the interest of decreasing the number of layers, just pinch them together. If that's too tricky for you to do, top version, tap, merge down, tap, merge down, and then they're all on one layer now anyway. You may as well tap and merge it down to the original layer 8 with the lines, the divides. Go into this area again. We're going to subdivide this in half and also that. Down here, whoops, I'm going to ignore that. I actually don't like what I did there, so that's too much. Let's put it back in again so it's a bit more, and we can go for the center of that area. Zoom back out, see if we can connect the dots. Hold it, raise it up a little bit so it is central. That's better. We should probably go for the outer edges too, so dot there, join them up. I mean, if you don't need to do the dots even, I suppose, just go from the corner to the corner. We're just mapping in roughly where the line should be initially. We want them to be irregular and unneat anyway. I've not quite given myself enough space to do that. Try that again. Corner to corner. So now we've got all of that frame in place in terms of the line work on it. I'm going to take that layer and just reduce the strength of it down to maybe 50%. Go to the top layer, create a new layer, layer 9. And this time I'm going to kind of make it less regular and actually draw freehand over the top. So with the medium brush with an airbrushing, same settings, 1% size, 100% opacity. I'm going to be looking to go over many of these lines now and just try and make them less perfect. Draw over them by hand, introduce irregularity, do it relatively neat, but the imperfections, the slight wave to it is actually maybe not little things that stick up like that, but try to keep it neat. Don't hold it down for too long and hesitate, otherwise it will snap to a perfect straight line. Move around the entire scene. We'll go around the edges of the frame of the window as well. Join up. I'll cut across there. All the way down. Keep going. Now, admittedly, this is going to be a little bit time consuming, but it is going to be worth it because by the time that we remove the perfect line, we'll end up with something that has all the lines in the right places, but they're not too perfect. So we'll do the same for the main outline as well. So you try to do it as neat as you can freehand, which isn't going to be perfect. Just make sure you don't allow it to snap to a straight line. I think once you've got those absolutely perfect straight lines, it becomes much easier to do it freehand as well. We could have gone in straight away with the freehand, but I don't think the lines would have been as successful at all. I think having the lines to follow makes a big difference. As you start to get a little bit more confident, you can speed it up, and you can see it bowing and kind of wobbling all around, and I'm absolutely fine with that. In fact, that's what I want to happen. You do your best to make it as good as you can, but inevitably it isn't going to be perfect. And ironically, that is perfect for what we want. Okay, so I've got a line here. I'm going to take it all the way down. And then if you're not quite sure where else you need to do, you can just go back to the layer 8, remove it, and that will inform you of that. It is the guide now that we're following. We are outlining the windows as well. You don't want this to look too scruffy, so do your best to make it look pretty decent. If lines are really tricky for you, then just slow down, zoom in a bit, do them in steps, whatever will work best for you. I think the only thing I'm missing now are the stripes that divide it in the middle. One more line, rotate it, however you're most confident doing lines, then do that. Check around the edges of each of the window frame, and I think that's about right. I can take the original layer 8 and remove that, and you can see we've got a really quite wonky version of it now, which is going to work quite well for what we need. So I'm going to take all of the layer 4 layers and pinch them together, so now they're on one layer. I'm going to create a layer above that, so layer 8 is now above layer 4 but underneath the other layers. I'm going to tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which links it to that original layer 4. So anything we add now, let's go for a colour that's really noticeable. You'll see it stops at the boundaries, it doesn't go over the edge, it doesn't intrude into any other areas, which is perfect. I'm going to go in with the hearts brush within artistic, and I'm going to go for the 4th colour on the middle row, 3% size, maybe 40% strength, and we're underneath the lines now, so we can start just bringing in some texture, making it less flat, trying to bring some character into the wood. Just go with the direction of the kind of beams of wood. Go up, middle ones here, for example, and then across. Go to a different colour. Perhaps we'll go for 5th colour, and we can start bringing some darker colours over here. We're going to have much of this in shadow. Bring some vertical lines into that section of the window, for example. Rotate it, move across. Now I want the top part of the window to be largely in shadow, so I can just go over this a little bit more enthusiastically. Bring it down to about 1/3 of the way, and then just stop there, and then cut across. I like to be a bit more broken here, like dapple. And then just fill it in. Move across. I'm going to shade in all of this side actually. We're still on the 40%, so it's layering up the textures still. Move across here to start to join up. Maybe this bit can be in shadow too. And you're already starting to get a bit of a shadow effect. Move across like that. Maybe halfway across on this one as well. A couple of times. Now I'm going to switch colour. Maybe go for the 1st colour on the middle row. turn that brush size down, low on the 2%, and a couple of these I'm just going to do the underside of this section so it gives it a little bit more three-dimensionality. I'm going to go for the third colour on the middle row, same brush, down to the 1%, still at the 40% strength, and then just maybe these edges could start to be lightly gone over, just start to ping them out a little bit. As we come further down out of the shadow, then we can just perhaps just go over that edge a little bit more strongly. Down here too. Go maybe to the bit that there is just emerging into the light. Maybe in this section too. Maybe even the middle section to some extent, not as much. I think I'm going to have the light coming from the top left in that kind of a direction. So it's probably going to hit this edge of that little bit of the frame, for example. These two middle sections are going to jut out a little bit more, therefore they're going to catch the light a little bit on their edge. It doesn't need to be consistent though. We can just have it getting kind of, as it comes further down, more evenly spread over the whole thing, but you can see it there just on the edges in some places. I think it works quite well for us. Go over a bit more there. Let's go to our colours again, maybe the fourth colour. Let's just more generally start to add some more highlights and texture. Now in the shaded areas we could use a cool colour, maybe the sixth colour along. So maybe in some of these sections we could just add some streaks of cool, a blue tone, adding to the grain there. I wouldn't want to overdo that. There's no reason we can't have a different kind of colour scheme, different influence in different areas. Let's go for something warmer. Let's go for maybe the eighth colour on the top row. We can bring some warm tones in up here. Again, just go with the grain of the wood. And downwards too. It can be a little bit rough with these lines. It doesn't need to be neat at all. I'm going to go back in with the fourth colour on the middle row. And certainly down in these lower areas, we've got more areas that are really subject to the sun. And if it's pointing upwards, just around the edge of this, for example, it should really catch the light. Go for the edges of these shapes. Then maybe turn it down even more, even lower on the 1%. Introduce some lines that cut through, like grain in the wood. And we can alternate that to a dark colour, so we can go for the ninth colour again. Same settings, 40% opacity, 1% size. And we can just bring in lines, make it look more weathered, more rustic. Some of the lines nice and bold if need be. You can see that one particular area now, the detail is working quite nicely. So really our task is to kind of duplicate that across the canvas. Bring in some lines across. Maybe we'll put it up actually. Let's put it up to 70%. Allows us just to be a bit bolder. Don't need to fill it with lines, it just have a suggestion of it here and there. And then obviously we can introduce that at any point just to further sell the idea that it is wood. Go in and out all of the areas of this frame and really let's see if we can sell that idea that it has a really kind of weathered look to it. And we can see the lines in the wood grain. It's not a particularly difficult thing to do, but it is a little bit time consuming. So just spend a bit of time on the wood grain. I think that it will definitely be worth it in the long run. It's not something you need to be overly neat about. You can be quite rough. It's quite a satisfying look because you don't need to be overly neat about it really. And it still can be very effective. Go back to a lighter colour, the third colour on the middle row. Now we've got some of those dark colours coming in there. We can just further enhance that grain with some highlights. Make them look even more weathered, especially along those seams and the little edges. Quite useful to do them there. Now I've Accidentally been doing some of the grain on layer 9. This is the kind of thing that happens when you have lots of layers. It's not a problem. What I'm going to do with layer 9 though is tap on the N and just dial it back. I don't want it to be quite as severe looking as it is, so I put it to about 50%, and you can see that it just subdues it. It puts everything in place a little bit more smoothly. I think the overall look is better for it. I'm going to go and create a new layer, but I'll probably put it underneath layer 9. And well, ironically, because we deleted or merged the layer, we have 2 layer 9s now. The top version, I might just tap on it and rename it so we can put lines. So now on layer 9 that's underneath the lines, we can go in there and we can continue adding some more features. Now again, I'm using the third color on the middle row. Dial it back actually, maybe it's about the 50%, 1%, and I'm just going to start ramping up some of the texture in some of the areas with this color. Be mindful now that the black lines are going to be easy to go over and obscure, and it's not necessarily a problem, but just be mindful of it. Go back in maybe with the black color, the 9th color on the top row. Restate some of these bits of grain in places, or even the main lines that we did have in there. Combination of that and the grain kind of merging together can work quite nicely. I think we can come back to these details a little later. We're probably going to move forward. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to layer 7, create a layer above it. All the layer numbers are mixed up, don't worry. As long as you're following, then it will all make sense. For layer 10, we're going to tap on it and put on the clipping mask. Again, a little arrow appears and links it to layer 7, where we had the dark color for the windows. And anything we add now is going to be restricted into those areas. So I'm going to use the rainforest brush, and with the rainforest brush, I'm going to go for the 10th color on the middle row, 3% size, 4% size, 100% opacity, and then I want just smatterings of this color. It's going to represent the kind of really nice daylight color. So I definitely want it heavily featured in this top pane. Maybe turn it down a little bit, then down to 2%. A little bit kind of randomly in the next pane, but not too much. And then just a little bit in this one as well. And it's just reflecting back some of the daylight, almost dappled through. So you can see leaves and foliage that are just obscuring it in places, but you can still see it. I'm going to go and use a really nice dark green, so maybe the 2nd color on the bottom row. Same brush, same setting, so it's at 2% size, and just a hint of that in the mix as well, not too much. Just tapping it in. Maybe the 3rd color, 5% size this time, but lower on the opacity, maybe only 20%. And then we can just tap it in a little bit. I don't intend to do too much on that. Just a suggestion. Things kind of reflecting a little bit there. Go to the smudge tool, put the smudge tool on the medium, or rather the hard brush within airbrushing. 3% size, 100% opacity, and just don't want this to be particularly airbrush shaped. So just mush that in a little bit. Give a slightly more expressive look. Push it around, something like that. And if you want to tidy it up at all, you can go back in with the airbrushing soft brush. Again, put it to the 10th color on the middle row. 2% size, 100% opacity. And if you wanted to just strengthen up some of those shapes, if you feel like you just need to make them a little bit neater in places, a bit more vivid, then you can do that. Okay, happy enough with that element. I'm going to go back to layer 3 and create a new layer above that. So layer 11 is all the way down here below all of the details of this window. I'm going to go in with the soft brush still, and maybe the 8th color on the middle row. 2% size, 100% opacity. And then just really quite pitched upwards from that corner. In fact, we don't even need to do 2 corners really. Sideways here, might need to even be a little bit steeper, and that's fine. And then we're going to join it down to this point. Take that layer, slide and duplicate it, transform, flip it horizontally and move it across to the other side. So we've got a duplication of that exact thing. Then from that top corner, we can just do a slight hint of a curve, join it up, hold it, and it will snap to a more perfect version, which is great. Go back to the layers and just merge the two layers of 11 together. Then I'm just going to fill in the shadow of the shaded side here. Turn it up a little bit, maybe just shade in this top section too. That's a little bit big, that top section. I've got another thing that I'm planning to do. Don't worry about the edges, it doesn't need to be perfectly neat. We're going to make it look rougher anyway. Maybe go to the 5th colour on the top row. Turn that down, 2% size, still the 100% opacity, and just fill it in down here. And then for the lower section of it, it needs to be lighter, so we'll go for the 2nd colour on the top row. And then that should stand out as just being a hint lighter, hopefully, than the background here. Turn it down, 1% size, just blend that in a little bit. If you need to just go along the edge just to tidy it up, yes, a hint, not too much. Hopefully you can see that on camera, it's a bit lighter there. Turn the opacity of that down. In fact, go to that layer, layer 11, tap on it and put on the alpha lock, still with the soft brush with an airbrushing. 3% size now and maybe 15% strength. And then within this section up here, we're going to have some lighter colours, dapple it in a little bit. But we could go in perhaps with the artistic hearts brush. That was a really good brush. What settings did we have? Well, let's put it to 5% size. Again, low down, maybe the 15%. It's quite a bold brush, even at only the 15%. So just tap it in, create a bit of a mottled look in the shadow area. And up here too, let's put it up again, maybe the 10%. Tap it in lightly. Again, just create some nice sort of texture up there, so it's not too flat looking. Back to layer 11, turn off the alpha lock this time. I'm going to go in with a darker colour, maybe the 1st colour on the middle row. Back to the airbrushing, maybe the medium brush. 1% size, maybe 60% strength. And we just got to now make these things work together. So kind of work in here, have it joined up a little bit, join it up here. Maybe just work in and around the edges where it joins the window frame, just create a chunkier kind of line. You get a bit more of a sense of division between those two elements. Remember, it's underneath the window frame, so you can't go over the top of the window. I feel like there should be more wood. Got a big section up here, so what I might do is just duplicate a section in a moment. We'll just go around and further define this edge a little bit of the window frame. Again, this is all freehand and all the better for it. We don't want it to look too perfect at all, and it isn't doing. When we get to the edge, I feel like I'm just going to kind of scribble across it. I want to create like an eroded look to the render. Kind of nibble that. Maybe some cracks that are just coming in. Breaking up into little sections perhaps. Go back to the 8th colour. Again, maybe you can just have it going upwards too, equally, beyond that line. Colour, maybe the 1st colour on the top row, just confusing the edges of that line so it's not obvious. Again to the 1st colour on the middle row. And obviously we need to do something similar along the edges here as well. Create that kind of nibbled look, like it's got bits that have just broken away. Back to the layer, put on the alpha lock again, and perhaps go in with something like the artistic hearts brush again. And with this 1st colour from the middle row still, so still that colour. 3% size, 15% strength. We can just start to add some more shading into this section perhaps. And just continue to darken it up over at this side, especially up in this kind of top corner area. Just going to blend it in a little bit, maybe turn it up again. 10% size, tap it in, kind of mottle that in a little bit more. Go back to the 8th colour on the middle row. Just try and get the right balance of those colours together. I think in this top section I want another beam of wood there at the top. Feels like that is too deep compared to the other sections. So we'll just extend that piece of wood at the top. So I'll do it on the same layer, it's not a problem. We'll go in with the airbrushing medium brush, go to the 9th colour on the top row, 1% size, maybe 70% strength, and I just want to do a line. Now I feel fairly confident in doing this freehand. Have a go. I think you'll find it's not that difficult, especially seeing as we don't mind if it's a little bit irregular anyway. It's not a problem. Extend that down, join it in there, go in with some of the lighter colours. So the 1st colour on the middle row, higher on the 2% size, just add some of this tone in, some lines across. It's a quick fix really. Then 2nd colour on the middle row, 1% size, maybe lower on the opacity, maybe 30%. Just a couple of lines across just to build in some of that texture again. And then back to the 9th colour on the top row as well for the black, 1% size, really low on that. Still only at the 30% strength. Just 1 or 2 lines in there to add a hint of that kind of texture and grain in there as well. And I think it looks a bit better now at the top. Happier with that. I'll stay with the 9th colour, higher on the 1% size, maybe 20% strength. Just work into this area a little bit more. Some of that slightly darker colour, I think. I've got a kind of chipped away render here that's just crumbled away from that edge. Let's add some dark tone in there just to really kind of sell that idea. Maybe it's build in these cracks. Just subtle kind of hairline cracks that are appearing. Don't do too many of them. I think I've gone a bit overboard there. It looks almost like vines if you do too many. Just 1 or 2, I think we'll get the idea across. There's something on the window that doesn't quite make sense, so we'll go back to layer 7. In fact, layer 10 makes sense because it has the blue reflection on it. We'll go in with the 9th colour on the top row. And again, we'll go in with the medium brush within airbrushing. Higher on the 2% size, 100% opacity. We'll just chip off the top. We're going to have a kind of reflection. Maybe that's a bit strong. Just try and aim it at the top. We'll do the same for that one. A bit smaller on those ones. Maybe just a little bit on the edge, not too broad. Just a hint of something there as well. And then maybe on this side too. We'll go back to layer 7 and create a new layer underneath layer 10. Again, it's got the clipping mask attached to layer 7. We'll have some shutters that are perhaps on the inside. Go in with the 3rd colour on the top row. Still with the medium brush. In fact, we'll change that. We'll go for the soft brush within airbrushing. 3% size, 15% opacity. And we'll just have a suggestion that the sunlight is just illuminating something. Let's create some anomalies. Some streaks. And then they get lighter as they go over this side. We don't need to overly define what it is. Maybe go for the 8th colour on the middle row. Maybe we need to have a blue in there as well, so let's go for something like the 6th colour on the top row. We'll go for a stronger blue. We'll go for the 9th colour on the middle row instead. Turn it down even more, 2% size. Have some of that blue in there. I quite like, and then we'll go in with a darker colour, 9th colour on the top row, still with the soft brush, 3% size, 15% strength. We'll just darken it up a little bit as it comes up into this upper area. And over on this side as well. A few streaks over there. A little bit of further refinement to the highlighted bits, so back to the 3rd colour, 2% size, maybe a bit stronger, 30% strength. Just sharpen up these edges, perhaps just a little bit. Just catching whatever it is behind that window. It could be curtains or a shutter or whatever you imagine, really. I'm going to add some more structural elements to the lower area before we start adding any of the leaves and the main shadows for the leaves. So we'll go to the top layer. We'll create another layer on top of that. I'm going to go to the selection rectangle, and I'm just going to do a rectangle here, and we can move it once we've created it. So I want to create a little bit of a windowsill. Let's go to an appropriate color. So let's go for the 4th color on the middle row, drag it into that rectangle, and it's not in the right place. That's fine. We can go to the transform, move it so it is now located where we want it. And that'll do. Perhaps just up a little bit so it has a tiny overlap, or at least not much of a gap anyway. We can always go transform, and again, freeform, nudge it, expand it if we want to. Deselect, check how it's working. I'm going to go to that layer and slide and duplicate it. The bottom version, I'm going to go select it and go to the adjustments, the hue, saturation and brightness, and turn the brightness down to 40%. You can't see it yet until we go to the transform. We'll move it down. Then we can go with the eraser, set to the medium hard brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 100% opacity, and just shave off a little bit of that corner and that one. Now it's definitely looking too neat, but first of all we'll just merge those 2 layer 13s together. Go to the top one, tap on it, tap on the merge down. Now our job is to make it look more organic, a bit more rustic. So first of all I'm going to tap on it and put on the alpha lock. Then I'm going to go to, well, let's have a look. We'll go to the artistic hearts brush again. Go to a solid, nice dark colour. So we'll go for the 2nd colour on the middle row. Go for something quite sizable this time. 20% size, 20% strength. And I'll just run a pass of that across. So we've started to add some texture in there, but we can definitely do more with it. Tap on it again, turn off the alpha lock. We'll go in with the airbrushing medium brush. We'll go for the 4th colour on the middle row. 2% size, 30% strength. Just rotate it however you find it easiest to work. In fact, I'm going to turn that up. I'm going to put that up to 70%. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bit too subtle. So we can just move along that, and I'm happy to start eroding that kind of neatness. Gets the edge, kind of round off some of these corners a little bit. Go to the 3rd colour on the middle row, turn it down 1% size, and just start building in some more highlights. Again, just keep it kind of rough. Back to the 4th colour. Rough up that bottom line here. And then I'm going to switch to a darker colour, so 1st colour on the middle row. Do a line underneath that, darken it up a little bit. Keep it kind of organic looking, quite rough, maybe along that edge too, and along that edge. And already it's looking a little bit more convincingly kind of like a rough stone. Go along that edge, along that one, and then we can make that bottom edge a bit rougher as well. And then we can introduce something like a crack, so we can go down even lower on the 1%, 70% strength, build in crack, and then when it goes down to here, we can just continue it on, even in the shadow area. build it up perhaps. Don't need to oversell that idea. So maybe in the bottom section, we'll go for something like the 8th color. We had it in this area, the inside of the window. We can have more of it at the bottom as well, just to bring in the same kind of hues. We can come back to that. We're going to add some more elements to this. We're going to do some brickwork that's exposed. The render perhaps has fallen away. Stay on the same layer. We'll go in with the airbrushing medium brush still and the 9th color on the top row. Still at the 1% size and 70% strength. And we'll just have some brickwork or bits of render that's broken away here. Perhaps you can do the outline of it first. And some cracks perhaps where it's not fully broken away, but it's cracking. Zoom up. Maybe another little section here perhaps. And more cracks, just release it, add it back in. Keep tapping it in. Kind of wobbly line as it disappears. Probably off into bushes or off into the vines and leaves perhaps. You can have a series of cracks through the whole of the render. Some up here perhaps. Definitely want it to look pretty rustic, pretty old. Bring some of the cracks down from this bit up into the upper section. It's going to tie it all together a little bit better. It's going to look partially like vines and, well, I'm not totally against that. Hopefully it'll become clearer that it is bits of render that's perhaps fallen away. Some more cracks through here. 2 creeping off. Some more sections here. Again, you're just kind of highlighting the cracks or like the shadow. And then we'll go over to this side and maybe create another section where the render has fallen away. And then we're going to give ourselves the opportunity to show some bricks in these areas. So I'm going to go to the first color on the middle row. I'm going to put the brush size up to 3%. Still at the 70% opacity. I'm not releasing the brush, so it's not going to be fully black. And I'm trying to do it in one neat movement rather than overlapping. And I'll try to do the same over at this side as well. Just try not to release the brush. Do it over on this side too. Something like this. Then we'll go in next with the 7th color on the middle row. Lower on the 2% size and about 20% strength. And I'm going to start adding bricks. So we've got an edge here that is going to be important. So I'm going to start doing chunk, the brick, and then another one next to it. And this side is going to be lighter. Just like it's lighter here compared to there. Another brick. Maybe this brick can extend across. And then another one. Again, split halfway. Zoom out, see how it looks. That's a little bit scribbled in, and I'm okay about that too. That's fine. We'll go for a lighter colour, maybe the 3rd colour on the middle row. 1% size, still at the 20% strength or so. Maybe that top edge can have some highlights on it. This little bit that's on that side can be a little bit lighter. Let's turn that up. In fact, let's go for it. 50% strength. This side of the brick and perhaps that leading edge, plus the bit at the top. I'm going to go again with the 9th colour again. Same settings, just try and make more of the gaps perhaps. Make them slightly less regular as well. Chip away at them, exaggerate the shadow a little bit. And the divides. Let's go to the 8th colour on the top row. Just go into this brick, add a bit more texture to it. I feel like it's a little bit flat looking, so just a few dashes and blobs just to make them a bit more interesting to look at. It's only at the, well, it's at 50% strength actually. Might be easier if I put it down to 20. Add a bit more texture and variety to these bricks. They look a bit flat. Okay, I think they're a bit better. And we'll do something similar over here, except I'm going to do them kind of largely in shadow. So I'll start perhaps with the 5th colour, something similar again. So I'm going to put the opacity way up again, maybe 60% this time, 1% size, and I'm just drawing in the bricks. And check them off so they're roughly similar on the other side. Maybe block them in initially. Might be the way to go. Get a bolder colour, maybe the 8th colour on the top row, 3% size, blot it in. Maybe this is just catching the corner of this top brick and the next one. So a little bit of sunlight is catching them. That's quite a nice effect, not too much though. I think they need to be brought out a little bit more. 8th colour on the middle row. Again, maybe the 8th colour, 20% strength, 4% size, just tapping a little bit of that colour. And then I probably need to go back to the 9th colour on the top row, 1% size, 40% strength should do. And whether you want to restate some of these divides. Something like this, and again just make a little bit more of that shadow of the render. Turn it up a little bit higher on the 2%, tap it in a few times, just again, maybe on this side should be slightly darker. There you go. Underneath the sill, perhaps we need to have some dark colour coming in here as well. Run the line all the way across, underneath there. Turn it up, 3% size, 15% strength or so. Just tap in, run in some kind of shadow underneath there. Okay, we're going to come back to some more of those details, refine them a little bit further, but we definitely need to add one of the main features of this tutorial, which is going to be the leaves. So let's go to the top layer and create a new layer, layer 14. And I'm going to go in with the organic rainforest brush. I'm going to tap on it and change the spacing from 27 to 50%. Click done. I'm going to go in with the darkest green that we've got, which is the 1st colour on the bottom row. I'm going to have it about 8% size and 100% opacity, and then just near the top I want to start creating some leaves up here, so I'm going to tap them in and then allow them to come further down. Now they're not exactly leaf shapes, they're going to be more suggestive of it. Now I've got a couple of techniques that I'm going to use to further enhance that, but for now we're just tapping in kind of smattering of these leaves. We'll have them collect in various places, overlapping, obscuring elements. Maybe a real collection of them up here, gets a bit denser. Then we can turn it down, 4% size. Some leaves that hang down, some vines like ivy, back up again if there's any gaps. Quite a collection up in this corner, I think. So we're going to go to the layer, slide and duplicate it, which you can see strengthens them up. So tap on the top version and merge down. And we've just got a slightly more firm, crisper version of the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the 3rd colour, 3rd green on the bottom row, 5% size, 100% opacity, and then just within some of those areas add a slightly darker, or rather a lighter green. Keep adding them. And then going to switch to the 5th green, and then we'll start to notice some much more vibrant greens coming through now. Just keep tapping them in, and it is more suggestive of leaf shapes. It doesn't need to really exactly spell out a leaf shape. If you want to spend more time and go in there and individually draw some of these leaves, then that's absolutely great. Go ahead and do so, but I don't feel that we necessarily need to do that to get the overall look. So I'm just tapping in some of these lighter greens. They're working quite nicely. I'm going to slide and duplicate it. The bottom version, we're going to go to the adjustments, the hue, saturation and brightness, and turn the brightness all the way down. Then I'm going to transform and just drag it slightly down to the left corner a little bit. Not too much, just a hint. Deselect, adjustments, motion blur, and again, drag it down wherever you're starting, drag it down more towards that bottom corner to about the 40%. And then I'm going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and do it even more. Blur this time to about 10%. And it instantly helps give it some sense of bulk. We're going to add more dramatic shadows to it, but I think it helps initially to have that in place. And you can see we've obscured good parts of our image, and I knew that that was going to happen, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm going to go down my layers. I'm going to go to layer 3 and create a layer above that. So layer 16 is all the way down here underneath layer 11, but above layer 3. I'm going to go to the rainforest brush, which I've reset. I'm going to use the fourth color on the top row, 3% size and 100% opacity. And now we're just adding some really nice dramatic kind of shadows, dappled. It's really going to shut down much of the light on this rendered wall. So that whole top corner, this whole bottom area, especially underneath the sill. I mean, we can actually follow the windowsill there. Maybe turn it down 2%. Create a more exact shadow for the sill anyway. Or include some of the greenery. Back up again, 3%. Have some shadows for things that are perhaps not making contact with the wall, but when we do have something that makes contact right next to the render, then we can have the appropriate levels of this blue color right next to it as well. And don't worry if you add too much of it, it's not a problem because you can always remove it. So wherever you've got large amounts of the green and leaves, then you can just add a smattering of this in as well, but not exclusively for there. You can do it all over. So there might be some other things that higher up are also casting this shadowy color. Now I feel like it's a little bit too much, which is fine. So we can go in with the eraser, set the eraser perhaps to the organic rainforest brush, 3% size, 100% opacity, and well, we can equally start to remove it, perhaps even turn it down further actually, 2% size. And we can just start chipping away at this. If it's a little bit fierce, a little bit too much, then just chip away at it, subdue it slightly. Get some more of this sunlight pouring through. I think it is an important part of the overall success of this image to have the light pouring through, so don't totally shut it down. We'll lose something if we don't have enough of it. Just slightly tidy up that. Perhaps I'll go back to the two layers that have the greenery on, layers 14, pinch them together, or tap on the top one and merge down. I can also go in with the eraser set to the rainforest brush for that. If there's any areas where there's just too much greenery, then I can also remove some of that. It's about finding the right amount of each thing. If you feel like you've added too much of anything, then go in and just take it away again. I think I might keep that corner quite dense though. Back to layer 16. Go in and remove any bits that just don't need to be there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the layer that had all our green on. put on the alpha lock again, and we need to go in some really vibrant greens. So I'm going to go for the 8th colour, going with the rainforest brush at the current settings. So let's turn it down to 2% size, 70% strength. And I need to start adding some really vibrant greens in here now, just to offset some of those cool colours. We've got the sun pouring onto the wall, and we definitely need to have the sun really impacting on our leaves as well. Again, we can't add it to just anywhere. It's got the alpha lock on. And I'm not particularly worrying about the neatness of shapes. Perhaps we could, if you wanted to, go in with something like the airbrushing medium brush, 2% size, 20% strength, and you could just be a little bit more deliberate with some of the shapes if you feel like you need to be more angular with it. I'm not going to be overly fussed about how neat it is at this stage, or how absolutely leaf-like it is. If you want to, well, you can go in there and you can really specify your leaf shapes. But I'm just imagining where the light's coming from. I've got a bit here that's casting a big shadow, so the light must be hitting it. If it's got a dramatic shadow, then the light hits it, and therefore we need this bright, vibrant green to really be in there in at least some places. And you can start to see the effects coming through, and it is quite impressionistic. It's almost like you're squinting your eyes a little bit, and you can see the vivid kind of look coming through without spending ages drawing individual leaves. I think it is quite an effective way of bringing out that look. Now I'm going to leave some of it more in shadow. Don't feel like I need to go over every area and treat it completely consistently. Perhaps I'll go for 7th colour. We also have other colours. We have a really vibrant kind of greens here, so let's go for the 9th colour. Can vary it up a little bit. Maybe the light is coming through some leaves and you're getting this really rich, zingy kind of green, in addition to the greens where the light is reflecting and bouncing off the leaf. Back to the 8th colour. Sharpen up some of these shapes, perhaps. I think if you just create 1 or 2 leaf shapes with a bit more clarity, it's not going to be a bad thing. I think it will help lift the image generally. But I'm being quite careful not to specify a particular leaf shape. I am still going for an impressionistic kind of look. Perhaps I'll go to that layer, turn off the alpha lock, which will allow me to just strengthen up some bits, even if I haven't already got a strong colour there. I'm going to go back to layer 16. I'm going to go to the adjustments, the motion blur, and again, just drag it down in this direction. I want to make it slightly less clear than the leaves. So I've done it about 20% or so, 22. Again, down to the corner, 20% looks about right. Deselect. It just helps put everything else a little bit more clear. Some of the shadow areas are missing that rendered texture, so back to layer 16 with perhaps the 5th colour. Back in with the artistic hearts brush, 10% size, 20% strength. Just add, again, some more of this texture back here, down in this area. In the shadow area, we don't want to miss out on some of that kind of nice yellow warm colour. Don't want it to look too flat. I'm also going to stay on that layer, put the 9th colour, stay with the hearts brush, maybe down to 4% size, 20% strength. Maybe I could just exaggerate some of the darkness underneath some of these leaves a little bit more. Just going to follow around the edges, make a bit more of them. And then down in this bottom area down here as well. Blur that bottom edge. Go up a little bit, 10%. Tap it in down here. Only pressing lightly, blending in that area underneath the sill just a little bit. Even at this stage, I feel like there's 1 or 2 areas just a little bit too much of some of the things. So I'm just going to chip away if I don't feel it's necessary. I'm going to go in with 7th colour, medium brush with an airbrushing still, 1% size and really low, 10% opacity. And perhaps, well, we could just give one or two of our edges of our leaves just a little bit more refinement. And if we're thinking about ivy, then we might just get a little bit of a point at the edge, or a selection of points on our leaves, and just hints of it around the edges will go a long way to kind of suggest that. You see the hint of it. I'm not going to go and really spell out these leaves. I kind of want to keep it quite subtle. But just 1 or 2 points there perhaps, just to bring home the concept that they're leaves a bit more, not too much. And that can work wonders really once you start to just bring in some sharp outlines here and there, even if you're not really obviously spelling out a distinct leaf shape. Like I say, we are probably looking at ivy, but I don't really care to overly describe it. But please feel free if you want to do that. If you want it to be really more accurate, more defined in all areas, then I do encourage people to do so if that's what you want to do. With these tutorials, we're trying to get you to the point where you can create a look, an overall kind of effect, without getting hugely bogged down in drawing individual leaves, for example. But I totally understand if that's what you want to do. I'm a little bit obsessed with doing details once I get to that point. I'm going to put this opacity up. So we're using the 8th colour. Let's put it 100% opacity, 1% size. Let's really start to brighten up some of these shapes. I totally understand the need for accurate kind of refined detail. It's definitely where my obsession kind of lies in art, is really fine tuning. So I have to be careful in the tutorials not to push it to an overly long and overly detailed level. I'm just adding in some highlights now, creating some angles here and there, just to really push that. I'm going to go in with the 8th colour, medium brush, 2% size, 40% strength. Maybe just push 1 or 2 highlights. I feel like I've perhaps overdone it in places, and that's absolutely fine. Not too bothered. I think that the overall look is kind of working for us, and I quite like it. You're going to have to find the level that you're happiest with it and want to stop. I think I'm going to go back to layer 8. Go back in with the soft brush with an airbrushing. 9th colour on the top row. 5% size. 10% opacity. Go to this edge. Just darken it up there a little bit. And along the top. Don't need to do too much of that. More at the bottom as well. I think that makes it sit back there a little bit better. Go back to layer 11. Turn the size of that brush down 2%. I feel like I just need a bit more of that darkness up on this section as well. Maybe just scoot it across, just where it joins in that area up there. I think it again sits better in there a little bit now. Make a bit more of the shadow up in this corner, maybe in that corner too. Back up to maybe layer 13. I think there needs to be a few more highlights in here, and then we're almost done. So 3rd colour on the top row, still with a soft brush, 2% size, 10% strength. Just create some extra kind of noise to this. Lightly kind of maybe around where the crack is. Some highlights along those areas. Generally along the top, but make it a little less flat looking. I think maybe this area of that here perhaps needs to be even darker, so that's one area we could darken up. So go to the 1st colour on the middle row, 4% size, and just shut down some of the light in that area, just to contrast with that bit. Turn it down, 2% size, 30% strength. Some of the shadow, just like we've got on the wall, is also on that stone. And then on the underside too. I think that's working better. I feel like some of the ivy needs some vines. So we'll go to the inking, studio pen, and And we'll go in with the first colour on the middle row, 20% size, 60% strength. And we'll just imagine some vines are kind of connecting between some of these shapes. Again, I don't feel like I need to do too many of these, just be suggestive of it. Just one or two, I think actually could really sell the idea quite effectively. Just kind of connect them all together a little bit. We're on layer 13, it's underneath the leaves, so we don't need to worry about it interrupting and destroying any of that. One that kicks out there, why not? One last thing that I feel that would really benefit this image is to create like a really soft focus area around the outside. So I'm going to go to the wrench, copy canvas and paste. And if you've done that from the top layer, now you've got a version on the very top. I'm then going to go to the selection, freehand, draw around the outer area, skipping the stone sill, close the loop, feather to about 35%, invert. Now we've got the outer area selected, adjustments, Gaussian blur, and just blur that in to about the 10% and deselect both. And that's just really created a really lovely kind of dream-like appearance to the whole thing. And you can, with that top layer, you can tap on the N and intensify that, turn it down as much as you like. So I'm going to put it maybe to about this 70%. And I really love the way that it's blurred around the edges and sharper in the middle now. So I'm going to leave that at that point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Quite a different kind of subject matter for this channel, so I hope it's been interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon. Bye for now.